Hello, everyone. Sorry, it took a couple of seconds there to get this to go be happy. Hello, Michael. Sorry you're going to miss this one. Hi, Carl von Gasmode. Hi, Bishon. Well, it's fors and against, aren't there, of all these things, but you know, it's nice to have work at the moment. That's my policy anyway. Right then. So, glad you enjoyed it. Made the most of your vacation while you had it, Bishon. Hi, Brock. Hope the headphones are okay. And the little one is sleeping well. Good evening, Albert. Good evening, Frederico. Hello, King's Rook. Bijan. Hi, Ian Carr. Hi, Angus. Hi, Admiral. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Paul from Chicago. Thank you. Hi, Steph Thompson. Hi, Eamon. Hi, Gordon. Admiral. Alex Clark. Background image is a no image. I know. It was kind of weird because the sound started, but the covering image wouldn't go down. Luckily, you didn't seem to hear me saying frigate and fudge and fudgicle. So it didn't seem to be picking up all the audio because you didn't hear the non-swearing. It wasn't the chair. It was other things. It was probably my other things creaking. Construction work is over for today. When I talk with someone on Discord, I have to tell first, whatever they hear I do not repeat. My question of the day: how long were fireships a regular part of naval fleets? Actually, they were there for quite a long time. this particular case, he had fireships with him for the principal purpose of smoking out anyone sitting in harbour. So think about it this way. The fireship is basically your airstrike. It forces the enemy fleet. They can either stay in harbour and burn, or they can come out and fight you. Either way, they have to come and engage you. So pretty much as long as fire, and to an extent, as long as long-range artillery isn't available that can take most defences. King's Rook, this was off the coast of Scilly. So not far from the Adriatic, not far at all. I know why you're asking that question. Oh, and before anyone asks, another new t-shirt. This one I got for my aero engineers because I was giving them a lecture today before they would go off their exam. And I thought it'd be quite fun for them all. So, it's a shame what happened to Bing, but I heard that story from my uncle when I was 8 and how it set the standard for the service to pass Nelson. Great video this morning. I'm glad. It's a bit more complicated sometimes than the traditional memory is, but it's there is something to it. But the whole point is, 302 years ago today, there was a battle off the coast of Sicily. And that battle, called by many names, is called the Battle of Cape Passaro by the British. Sometimes Battle of Avola or Battle of Syracuse by other people, namely Spanish. Now, what do I have to talk about today? Well, I have to talk about bilge pumps. Well, hey, bilge pumps is a lot of fun. Bilge pumps is continuing. We just recorded episode 11, would you believe it, of the new stream today. And also I have to talk about Discord, because that's always growing and always fun. And I should say, please do share and subscribe to these videos, because as I've mentioned before, currently my income. Hopefully I get rehired in October. Hopefully I don't cause too much trouble before then. Stephanie Wilson, just heard the rattles and the bangs. That's better than hearing the swearing. Well, the frigate, the fudge, and the fudgicle. Ian Carl, what are a bomb ketch and a bomb tender? Well, a bomb tender is a vessel that carries the bombs. A bomb ketch is a mortar vessel. It can fire, it has the mortars in place, and it can fire those mortars to go over defences and attack targets. So it's basically they're especially designed so they can support the operations of a mortar. And it's an early version of a mortar ship. Hence it's referred to as a mortar bomb, not a mortar shell. Recognise a sailing ship and a space shuttle. Well, one is a sort of Saturn V lunar vessel, and one is the next generation, the Martian vessel design. So, pretty darn cool. It was a shame for Bing, but it could be said it reinforced the cult of aggressiveness in the Iron. I would say it's more a case of reinforcing than creating, yes. Michael did enjoy himself, Angus on. He did enjoy himself, yeah, definitely. Even what led to the demise of the Fireship and when did it happen? How can Nelson use them in the Nile? The trouble is, the Fireship is rather expensive. And it's slow to maneuver. And so, honestly, there were fireships still being used in Nelson's time. Definitely fireships still being used, but they weren't as useful. They weren't as a major part of the fleet in terms of they weren't there as part of the fleet when they're dispatching. If they'd been thinking he was going to do something like the Nile, they might well have sent a fireship with him because one of them could be useful. Jeff, how could Bing have effectively attacked effectively at Minorca? You talking about the sun? Well, he had the weather gauge, and he could have, if he changed tack for his centre and given orders, could have driven closer to the French ships. He could have also done something completely unexpected, like attacking them at night or something. Withdrawing shouldn't have been his first option, it should have been his last option. But the trouble is, by the time he got to it, he had convinced himself that was his only option before it even began. Now, the reinforcements of the bomb catches meant that they were able to withstand ice better, hence used in Arctic exploration. Yep, they were very useful for that. Jeff, John Hart, when did bomb vessels go out of service? Ooh. Well, that depends. At what point do you start to consider things like the Monitor their successor? If you consider a Monitor's purpose versus a bomb catcher's purpose, they don't go out of service till after World War II. If you don't, then some are used in the Crimean War. Now, hang around still after then a bit, so probably about the same time as. Well, hang on, no, I think the Americans War they used them. So, probably it's the mid pre-Dreadnought era. Mid pre-Dreadnought era when they sort of start going out. Does Clark, am I right in thinking that the masts of the bomb catch were placed heavily towards the rear for the firing lines of the mortar? Sometimes, yes. Sometimes the forward mast was collapsible or was able to be lowered in some way. There were sort of options put in place for it. SpaceX Dragon 2. First one just removed from the ISS. Martian one is Starship made of stainless steel. The test first prototypes holding up, opening up to Texas. Okay. Count I guess some World War II artillery mortars could be considered the descendants of bomb missile. Yes. Ian Carr. Were fireships elderly ships due for scrapping? They were usually picked ships which they weren't going to be using for much else more. And so that's what they were called for. But there were also ships which were taken off the enemy, which were, again, for not used for much more after all the damage the Royal Navy had done to them, so they were good for fireships. John Shay, hello, Doctor. Sorry, mate. What did I miss? Not much so far. Anyway, so the 44 and 50 gun ships were considered ships of the line. Were they two deckers, or did they look more like a large frigate? They were two deckers at the time. They were two deckers, and yeah, they were fairly viable for the time. Sam Thompson, in regards to Bing the second, could he have pulled off a distant rotating blockade with the longer range, better speed and faster fire? Just eat away at them. Not to relieve Minorca. He had to relieve the siege on the island, the fortifications. So he had to go in there and break it. Danny Freeman, also, fire ships used effectively means no prize money. That was part of the reluctance for them. Inca, could you have kept Minorca from the Spanish? Good base and alternative made a holiday destination with driving on the right. It would have been very nice if we could have, but it would have been quite difficult. Time, technically, the Sardinians... well, no. When it was first Bing, it was the Sardinians. Second Bing, it was the Brits, who didn't really have many troops there. Evan, how did the Cape Passaro affect Spanish naval operations in the Mediterranean? Couldn't they draw ships from other fleets? No. They didn't have as big and as viable fleet for Philip the Fifth as they did for Philip II, and basically that wiped out their effective fleet in the Mediterranean. And when they did try and get more ships, they just found the Royal Navy was winning there going, hello, boys. We outnumber you 3-1. We've never known a war like this before. We won't know a war like this ever again. It's heaven. We outnumber you 3-1. Happy days are here. You know, the Royal Navy are nasty when they're outnumbered. But they're sort of the definitions of... there are people in this world who are poor losers. Then there is people like Richard Hammond, who occasionally are described as poor winners because of the way they treat the people who lose to them. Then there's the Royal Navy when it finds out it outnumbers you. It's sort of a euphoric moment. They don't know how to contain it. It's just, I'm so excited! sort of thing going on. It's just too much, and yeah, that's what happens to the Spanish Navy in the Quadruple Alliance. Vision, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror of the ill-fated Franklin Division Northwest Passage of bomb missiles, yes. Jerison, apologies for being late. Public transport is the future. Yeah, it can work when it works. Why did Bing Senior use for what did Bing Senior use for frigate duties? Well, he didn't have any frigates. He wasn't assigned them. So basically, he used the fact that I know the enemy's at Sicily, so I'm sailing straight for Sicily. He was using the local intelligence networks of what the Spanish were up to, and he was told they were in Sicily, and he went and sailed around Sicily till he found them. And he really was hunting them. JP, how did 74s replace 70s? I noticed the Spanish had 74. It's just slowly. Basically, they slightly lengthen the design, and they find a space for the extra guns, and it fits in. So, Thompson, my understanding, I guess going full sail chase guns firing and giving both broadsides double shot wasn't a practice then. It was beginning to be a practice, but really, if you want to talk about the gunnery techniques, you need to go and have a chat with Kate Jameson. She is a superstar on gunners. And actually, I have been shamelessly using some of her blog stuff to help with today. In other words, to work out what other people have been trying to say. Inca, has there been a ship named after Bing Senior with naming conventions RN for successful admirals? Or father paving for the controversy of the sun? Bingo! Basically, because of the actions of John Bing, George Bing is forgotten. Excellent. The Royal Navy made good use of Gibraltar even then. Yes, they did. It was very much beloved at that point. That's good. When the Aegis Sail Royal Navy outnumber the enemy... Oh, look! The enemy built the new ships. Let's be honest, that is pretty much what Cape Passaro turned into. I think there's something like 9. The Royal Navy acquires 9 brand new, pretty much, ships of the line. They're very happy to have those. How did he bait the Spanish to fire first? He just kept harassing them. Honestly, you've got that much bearing down on you, at some point you are going to crack. Then as excited as a travel class destroyer upon spotting an enemy ship of any size, tiny escort battleship doesn't matter when. Yeah, pretty much. Jack Ray, the gain is high again. Let's sort out the gain then. Is that better? Or is that better? Not sure why the gain is going high. I've used it at the same level all day, but suddenly it's gone high. Don't know why. Sorry, Danny Freeman. Aegis Sail RN. We don't outnumber the enemy by enough. Let's go capture some more ships. Seems sensible. Glad that's better. Glad that is better. Thank you. I have no idea what happens to that gain. It's been on the same settings, as far as I know, all day. This is the fleet the Royal Navy gathered. And it's gathered in Naples because... And this is only a couple of days. This is the 1st of August. 10 days later, they'll have won the battle. So this is the fleet 10 days before the battle. And it's painted in Naples because they've turned up there first and are basically going, do you know where the Spanish are? They're down there. Thank you. Let's take on as much water and alcohol as we can, and we'll go find them. Eamon, how were 44 and 50 gun ships of the line viable this time? Did they just become too small by march of technology, like the 64 gun ship? Slowly. In 1718, what is viable is nowhere near to what would be viable in required in 1815. So basically, between this point and 1805, guns, the size of ships all go up. And the weight of broadside really does tremendous. I seem to remember there's one quote that the average second... Remember, Bartholomew, his flagship at this point, is a second rate. So imagine that in a 90-gun ship, second rate. Imagine the scenario in Nelson's time if you told him, your flagship is going to be a second rate, Nelson. Lord Nelson, you're going to have a second rate for your flagship. he'd have probably looked at you as if you're insane. Second rates weren't even divisional leads by that point. Your fleets were mostly made up of first, second, and thirds. But this is the point. In this period, they have first, seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths. And the older ships are usually some of the smaller ships, but they can also be some of the fastest ships and most maneuverable ships, so they can be actually very useful in a fight, which is why they're kept around and why they're used in this one. And it's interesting to note that the first group which engages, the first attack squad which reaches the enemy, are not his bigger ships, as much as he's trying to crowd on sail. It's the smaller ships which have reached the enemy and are going, hello, we're here. You're not getting away from us. Thomas Fryer, were there any basic differences between the ships of the line at Bing Command and those of Nelson's day? Bigger, have ability to put on far more sail, and tend to be copper-bottomed. All these things make them slightly easier to maintain and keep operational. Well, honestly, Brock Payne, which foreign navy provided best fighting ships to the RN, and what ship was it? Probably it was some of the Spanish ones. The Spanish and the Dutch were both good manufacturers, but you see, the French would supply one. They were mathematically perfect, but the British would have to rebuild them. Because as beautifully and as balanced and as thin and as perfect as they were, they couldn't do what the Royal Navy wanted them to do, which was carry a lot of supplies wherever they went in the world. Because the Royal Navy needed to operate wherever it went in the world, not just die of sickness. So that's what happened. They were rebuilt. So probably the Spanish. I wonder which ships the RM would look forward to taking to today if they could take like back then. They seem to quite like some Danish designs at the moment. So maybe the Iver Hjort class to back up the Type 31s. Some of the Italian designs are quite cool. I'm not sure I'd be partial to the French equivalents. Some of the Dutch patrol vessels are quite nice. It's a case of what do the Royal Navy want? Because the trouble is with taking ships today is you don't have to crew them. So you don't really want to take an Arleigh Burke because that's so different to your crewing manifest of your own style. So you want to if you're going to crew something, you want it to be similar to your own in terms of personnel equipment. So I'd go, Danish or Dutch. That's good. When and why did the Navy switch from the weight of shot to muzzle diameter for classifying ships? I'm guessing it's something to do with different types of shell weight or LPHE. Basically, it's going to sound strange. When you're dealing with cannons, everything's a bit rough and ready. You can afford to categorize based on weight of shot. Once you're getting to shells, they have to be very carefully calibrated to fit the fit the barrel. So then you have to start changing to diameters. So that's what the changes and the calibers. Kingsrook, was there a zero-off rate, or would that have been a new standard for first rates? Basically. That would mean first rates going up even more. Oh, Richard, when Principe Austrias, formerly HS Cumberland, was recaptured, will she rename Cumberland again? I thought there had been another Cumberland built in that time, but I'm not sure. Now you're asking the question, I'm not sure. Jeff Bader, what sort of frigates were around in 1718? Did the 44s and 50s do some of the frigate jobs? To an extent, they certainly did the fast movement job for the fleet action. Honestly, most of the frigates are 36 gunners they have at this period. And did RN ships carry more stores than other ships at the time to give them more range? To an extent, yes, it was sort of more stores, but it was also. And by the way, I apologize if I'm a bit slow this evening. Daniel Freeman, amongst many others, keeps reminding me that I should be hydrating and drinking. And today, dealing with all the builders, running around all stuff, I forgot a bit. So I did get a little bit heat stroke-ish. So I'm okay, but if I'm a bit slower than normal, that's why. What sort of answer that one? And did the RN ships carry more stores than other ships at the time to give them more range? I wouldn't say they carried more stores, but they certainly carried a healthy amount of stores. And they wanted to have more. How do I put this? They had less faith in their ability to find stuff wherever they went. So they tended to carry a wider range of stores. Jeff, Iron Ship's named for Admiral George Byng. Apparently, the captain class frigate HMS Torrington of World War II was named for him, but only served a very short time. Yes, I felt they were going to do much. They'd probably gone for Torrington, his Viscounty. Good way of keeping away from Byng, but they did want to keep it away from that. Weird, you are out of focus on my TV but not my phone. Jeff, I have no idea why, because it's the same camera and the same light source, at least to my knowledge. I'm watching it carefully. Federico Vega, maybe we should call zero rates the bear moths that came after the Seppings improvements in 1930s. 1830s. Tempting, but I think I'll just call them super first rates. King's Rook. Mischlotes, they had rifle cannons in the weight of shot era. See Drax videos on cannons. Yep. And when they're rifled, again, you have caliber. Jeff Wheeler. Thanks, Daniel. That was a good tip of Daniel, which was my TV decided to default display this stream at 140 or something. I then switched it to a high resolution. I have no idea why it will be doing that. So all the normal settings are active. Yep, it claims it's all okay. Oh. Basically, I've got to stop being a bit of an idiot in the heat. But anyway, getting onto these guys, because we've now got them up, and it's Admiral the Fleet George Byng, who I rather like. He's a fairly decent admiral. In the nicest way, he didn't have that stellar career beforehand, and he comes through and he does quite a successful thing. I'm a bit upset for Vice Admiral the Blue Charles Cornwall. Mainly because he dies in Lisbon on the way home. So he never really gets to do anything after this. And also, I'd point out, one of the interesting things is Cornwall is chosen by Bing. Bing basically goes, I want him as my deputy. Delaval is... it's stressed to him it would be good politics to have Delaval along. So he has Delaval. Emin, after Cape Passaro, did the RN and Marine Nationale cooperating closely on Spanish trade and Mediterranean? To an extent, the Marine Nationale was really not up to that much at that time. So, the RN did the bulk of the work. But when the French could be along, they were happy to have them. Abazaski, switch to my PC now. No one shall disturb me. I am glad. And King's Rook, YouTube adjusts the default resolution of videos and streams based on the bandwidth of your connection to their servers. It can act up on occasion, though, because it is YouTube. Didn't know that. Richard Virgo. Zolto, even though he's given carte blanche to pick ships and captains, he didn't pick any first rates even for himself. Well, this was the rather interesting thing, and I looked into this one. And basically, his decision seems to be he didn't need them. He was taking sufficient ships he didn't need the first rate, so he could afford to lead them for the UK home defence and take the second rates with him. And you sort of sit there and go, you have to be impressed by that sort of level of strategic command, that there's a commander who sits there and goes, I can have the biggest and best if I want it, but do I really need it for the job I'm going to do? No. Then why am I taking it? So that makes me, how do I put this? Really rather respectful of George Bing. I think he was a very sensible... And also, it makes him a very different character to his son, who was complaining that he didn't have this ship, this enough guns, this. And there's this... His father had gone, I don't need those. I need this, and I need this, and I need this number of ships, and I want these people in them, but that's it. I don't want to have all the rest. It's to an extent, it is confidence, but it's also... He knew his enemy. He'd fought the Spanish before, and he had this idea, which is kind of an interesting one, and may well affect British design as it goes forward from this point. Sorry. That the greater maneuverability of the second rate made it actually the more powerful ship, to his mind. Oh, Richard, had iron guns pretty much replaced bronze cannon iron by 1718? Pretty much. So that adds set insult to injury to take second weights to fresh healing. Well, this is the thing. He takes... If I just get it up. They do exist alongside each other quite a lot, bronze guns and iron guns. But by this point, iron guns were definitely in the vast, overwhelming ascendancy. So, he takes Barfleur, Shrewsbury, and Dorsetshire, 3 second rates. He takes Breda, Burford, Captain, Essex, Grafton, Kent, Lennox, Oxford, Royal Oak, all third rates. Canterbury, Dreadnought, Dunkirk, Montague, Ripon, Rupert, Superb are fourth rates. Rochester and Argyle, fifth rates, and Charles Galley, a 44 gunship, is a sixth rate. Sixth rate. So honestly, you could say Charles Galley was pretty much his frigate. But it's a fairly well-armed force in many respects. Air conditioner dehumidifier function is a true marvel of applied engineering. Yes, it is, and it will be lovely, right? Need better than lieutenants. Admiral. Now, here's the thing. I have a picture of Vice Admiral Don Jose Antonio de Gazzetta, who is an absolute prat, and I mean a prat of the First Order. You are outnumbered. You are outgunned. You're going to be out seamanshiped by the Navy. You know that. Who you're going to fight? Why, in all name of all things holy, do you leave your secure anchorage? The interesting thing is, Rear Admiral George Cammock, you can't find pictures of him for love nor money. And the reason is because he was a traitor to Britain, and he was considered useless in Spain because no one listened to him, so therefore they lost the battle, so then they blamed him for it. I actually almost feel sorry for the traitorous little... Frederico Vega, did Bing know the Spanish commander and how useless he was? Not personally, but he would have received intelligence reports and information, and I think he probably had an idea that this was a very untested, untried commander who was a favourite of the powers at court, not a favourite of the sailors. And Bing would have drawn from that from what he wanted. Vision. An HMS Rupert and HMS Cornwall would be a humorous pair. That they would be. Kingsrook. Cammock sounds like a nightmare. To an extent, yeah. Vision. So no HMS Cammock. What made him a traitor besides fighting for Spain? Because he was supporting a Jacobite rebellion, and because he also kept sending letters to various British officers offering them great rewards if they rebelled against Britain. Basically, Cammock was sure he should be in charge. In fact, in his world, he should have been Bing, not Bing. And the thing was, he had very good ideas, but he was very bad at putting them across to people, so no one really listened to him. And then it made it worse by being very bad at saying "I told you so" incredibly loudly after he was right. Which meant people stopped listening to him even more because they just were getting insulted. Cammock going off and joining another service that isn't exactly unheard of at the time, no. Many armies had officers from all over the place, yes. But he went off to... Well, going off and commanding for Russia or for a South American country, that would have been fine. Going off and commanding for Spain when Britain's at war with Spain is a different matter. He was really, George Cammock was... Well, I think they have the problem in that the Spanish, and when I was talking about the Armada, I said one of the issues was they had so many senior naval officers. No, so many senior officers there and very few naval officers. In this time, Spain has some very experienced naval officers, but it doesn't have enough senior military officers in that they're good sailors, they're not good fighters. They don't understand how to fight. They think they're just they're almost to an extent maneuver warfare obsessed. And in this case, it gets them into trouble because he has galleys, he has all sorts of things which have made fighting. If he could have suckered the British fleet into coming into the bay at him, he could have, done something. Instead, the galleys mostly escape. Kamok ends up dying in Spain afterwards. He does survive the battle, but he ends up dying in Spain afterwards. He's not really that much beloved by the Spanish. They're not even sure which town he dies in. And as Federico Vega says, he does choose poorly. He keeps choosing the wrong people to back up. So, the British ships, and I'm going to disappear for a second while I do this, because I just want to see you to all see these. Right then. So these are the ships the Royal Navy's mounting. 90 guns, HMS Barfleur, which is kind of nice. George Saunders gets injured, I think, and Richard Lestock takes over. Frederick, was the result inevitable, or could they have done something to turn it into a Pyrrhic victory at least? It actually wasn't even inevitable. If they had properly defended the bay they were in, they could have forced the British to either hang around outside, or if the British had come in, they'd have been in a world of pain. What was the average reach of a bomb ketch? Well, a single bomb ketch is not going to have enough firepower, enough range to really take out stuff sitting in a bay. As much as you might like. He was, according to Wikipedia, from an Essex family and had served several Protestant monarchs, so I'm guessing he wasn't Catholic, just an opportunist. Yeah, I think he was from an Essex family, grew up in Ireland, and, no. He was an opportunist, that was Kamok's thing, and someone who believed he should be basically worshipped as God. Shrewsbury, 80. Dorsetshire, 80. Breda, Burford, Captain, Essex, Grafton, Kent, Lennox, Oxford, Royal Oak, Canterbury, Dreadnought, Dunkirk, Montague, Ripon, Rupert, Superb, all 60s and 70s. And the interesting thing here is you've got Dreadnought and you've got Captain in use in this point. And the HMS Captain in use at this time had been built in 1678. There'll be another HMS Captain built in 1743. And then next one will be built in 1787. And then another one. And then there's HMS Captain, who was launched as HMS Carnatic, who was renamed HMS Captain 1815. So it's, this is one of the earlier HMS Captains. And she's officially described as a third rate on Wikipedia. I'll go with third rate. Yeah, if you hear figures being discussed behind me, the reason is because my mum and sister, and I to an extent, I'm all slightly worried by the fact that we are basically going to be working in our rooms for the foreseeable future, as it doesn't look like the universities are going back anytime soon. And so they've been looking into the concepts of, as we're already having work done on the roof, whether or not we can have some rooms put in the roof up upstairs, or what things are going to be. And even for a bare bones project, it's a lot of money. So, yeah. So if you hear anything being discussed behind me, permeating the open door because I have it open to give myself a cool breeze, that's what's being discussed. Okay. Yes. So let's see. Okay. Ship number Frederica Vega, ship number 15, commanded by Francis Drake, a descendant. Yes, as far as I know. In car, flagship HMS Barfleur appears to be English built despite the name. Yes. Barfleur has turned up a few times in British history, in Royal Navy history. HMS Dunkirk as well. Both ships were, I think, names which had originally been captured from the French. Whilst they were built by British, they'd been captured from the French, I was feeling. Abazaski, Matthews and Lestock ring a bell for me. Weren't they commanders in one of the Anglo-French battles? Yes, they were. There are a lot of officers here who end up being commanders of the Royal Navy in battles coming up. There's Matthews, there's Hamilton, there's Haddock, and Vanber and Winder, if I remember correctly. Captain of Dreadnought has an interesting name. Let's go through him. William Haddock. Yep. Interesting enough, I had a maths teacher called Mr. Haddock, who unfortunately was no relation to William Haddock. Otherwise, he might have been more fun. George Canuck sounds a lot like the other traitor Benedict Arnold in Career, Ambition, and Attitude. Yeah. He was a, broadly speaking, slightly above average ability man who really couldn't do the stuff which he needed to do to actually get ahead. Thomas Rowan, was Captain Francis Drake related to the other Francis Drake? I think I've answered that one. I love the length of service they achieved in the age of sail. HMS Dunkirk served 98 years. Yes, she served 98 years. Just check how big a refit she has in Chatham at about the age of 32 and about the age of 66. Right, so this is the Spanish equivalent. Donna Sproda. Worcester was a 48-gun third-rate frigate built for the Navy of the Commonwealth of England, which launched in 1651. After restoration in 1660, she was renamed HMS Dunkirk. Star-Lord's mum in Guardians of the Galaxy is played by Laura Haddock. Jeff Miller. Does the Royal Navy have a pool of names linked to signal codes that it keeps going back to? It does have a naming committee who do like their history. Refit. Well, a couple of the nails are the same as the original ship. Right then, so here are the Spanish ones. You have the 74, the Rio San Felipe, a third rate, basically. Príncipe de Asturias, another third rate. San Juan Bautista, fourth rate. San Luis, San Pedro, San Carlos. We should, of course, not joke about the fact that San Carlos got captured by Kent. But it was kind of prescient for, 1982 that in 1718 San Carlos was captured by Kent. Real Mazzi, San Fernando, Santa Isabella, Santa Rosa, Perla de la España, 54. Escaped. So, yeah, that's your fifth rate managing to run away. And then San Isidro, Hermione escapes. Voldante, captured. Esperanza, burnt to avoid capture. And then we can get into the frigates, which are also quite nasty. It was a very nice shopping list. Basically, I was going to start off by bolding the ones which were captured. And then I realized it was slightly more impactful to bolden the ones which were not captured. Frederick Vega, a nearly 7-year refit. Yeah. His uncle, younger brother of his father James, an influential figure in East India Company, was also named Station Master. Bishop King's Rock. Some small or medium-sized steel-hulled ships of support auxiliary natures can or are reaching a century mark, including some tugs and fireboats. Yeah, fireboats especially can do, because no one wants to pay for the thickness of steel you can build a fireboat out of. It's basically like an icebreaker, but it doesn't have to do the ice damage, so it doesn't get the same wear requiring replacement. Sandwich Pratt, I've actually made it to a live for once. Welcome. Hope you enjoy. As you notice, again, the Spanish Navy has fireships. It also has galleys. Here is the point. If the English had been, I don't know, if the English had been coming through the entrance to a bay and the Spanish had gone, our fireships are sailing out at you, our bomb catches firing, our galleys are manoeuvring around. Let's be honest, who's going to maneuver be more maneuverable in close quarter fighting? A galley or a ship of the line? He's got an army ashore. They could be coming out in boats. There are a myriad of reasons. He should have said, the moment he goes into deep water, this thing has an advantage. Honestly, the moment you go out into the ocean, 22 ships of the line versus 15, there isn't really much other than a foregone conclusion. This is not the Royal Navy at the Battle of Trafalgar. You haven't got that sort of technological superiority. In fact, in many ways, the sailing superiority is on the Royal Navy side in this one. So they've got sailing superiority, they've got moral superiority because they have this expectation of victory. They have the fact that they are the part of the Royal Navy, whereas for Spain, the Navy is a choice for keeping their dominions and their their money coming from their empire. For Britain, it's essential to its survival. You know, there's the old thing. If the British losing the Armada would have been for England, for the Spanish, losing the Armada was sugar, we've lost the fleet. There's a difference here in the scenario. So for the Royal Navy, this was a big thing. And actually, that's arguably another reason why Byng chose the ships he did to take with him. Because he was taking one of the largest fleets the Royal Navy had ever put to sea, but he was taking ships which, if you look through, are expendable. I.e., the Royal Navy has more second rates. It has plenty of third rates. It has plenty of fourth rates. It has plenty of fifth rates. He's taking the ships which, if they lose, they can survive without. Which tells you what his preparations are. He is thinking he is going to find the enemy in a bay, and he is going to have to fight his way into that bay and engage them at close quarters. He's expecting to lose a lot of ships. That is what Byng is expecting. That is what you can tell when a former senior naval lord, the equivalent of First Sea Lord, picks a fleet which conspicuously doesn't include any of the premier assets in that fleet. It tells me two things. One of them is that he expects to take heavy losses. The other one is he expects to do a lot of fighting because he's picked ships which he can fully crew, he can to an extent overcrew and have space for a bit more crew. Vision, look, at HMS Warrior in the US Navy, she'd be still puttering around in World War One, re-engined and rearmed. Small navies have some very old ships, like Taiwan's World War II sub. And honestly, if I was China, I'd be scared of the World War II sub. God knows what it'll get up to. Let's be honest, any sub which has been survived that much time underwater and that many years in service has got to be tough as nails and given plot armor. Coming announcement: Russian salvage ship Kimoma, commissioned 1915. Yep. Interesting enough, I always wondered if she was commissioned as part of their efforts to try and salvage the fleet from Tsushima. Frederick Vega, when he saw the Spanish fleeing, then he must have been so happy. He was probably sitting there going, "Oh my God, you have just handed me this." It's kind of like, really, Nicholas Rogers' book doesn't do this justice. It's a case of it's very, very limited. Let's see. Okay. So, this aroused the Quadruple Alliance of France, Britain, Austria, Netherlands, and later Savoy. But the French Mediterranean fleet had not recovered from the Toulon disaster 10 years before. Dutch admiralties were financially exhausted, and only the faraway British were in a position to enforce the alliance's demands. Initially, therefore, the Spanish were unopposed. Not until the summer of 1718 did a British fleet under Sir George Byng appear, with orders to force a Spanish withdrawal from Sicily. His position was delicate, for war was not yet formally declared, and the alliance was still under negotiation. Byng, however, had a robust attitude to responsibility. His maxim was that a commanding officer should only call a council of war to screen him from what he has no mind to undertake. Consider what his son did. When Spaniards refused to re-embark the army, he proceeded to attack at once, correctly anticipating approval from home. The Spanish fleet, with only 14 ships of 50 guns or more against Byng's 21, there are 22. There are 22. I know, I've counted it, going through it several times, but we'll say it's a typo. And there are 15 ships of the line on the Spanish side, but again, we'll say it's a typo. Was anchored in Paradise Roads off Messina, where deep water and strong offshore currents made it difficult to attack. If the Commander-in-Chief Antonio de Casanata had followed the advice of his Irish subordinate, Rear Admiral George Cammock, one of James II's former officers, he would have stayed there, but instead he fled southward out of the Straits of Messina and formed the line of battle, which fell apart when Byng caught up an attack. The resulting action, the Battle of Cape Passaro, on the 31st of July, 11th of August, was constantly an untidy chase in which more numerous and more heavily armed British ships achieved an inevitable victory. 7 Spanish ships of the line, including 3 flagships, were captured. Part of the Spanish force took refuge in shore, pursued by a squadron under Captain George Walton. Have a look at the battle list. Consider what George Walton is commanding. He is commanding the Canterbury. It's one of his 60 guns. And that's the advantage, again, of having the smaller ships with you. In this case, the 4 freights. Because they could do things which others couldn't. The resulting... okay. A few days later, Byng received from him a report on the movements of the Spanish army ashore, with a laconic sentence, apparently added as an afterthought, describing his own activities. We have taken and destroyed all the enemy's ships upon this coast, the number as per margin. He just written the number in margins. This is the lovely Captain George Walton. Look him up. He is a Philip Vian of his day in terms of his ability. He is definitely one of the most aggressive officers that Byng could have had with him, and Byng uses him as a de facto commodore. So Byng technically has a vice admiral, a rear admiral, and he isn't using them for that. The vice admiral is being used for diplomatic missions. The vice admiral is older and in bad health, but he's still the best vice admiral Byng could find available. The rear admiral was foisted on him, and he wasn't too keen on him, and he seems to spend his entire time going, "You can't move far away from me." So he operates with commodores, and to an extent, Drake, Walton, and Dreadnought's captain Haddock are all used as commodores in turn. Now, that's Nicholas Rogers' account, and it's fun times. Jerison, I keep losing sync. I don't know why. Emmett, could the Spanish have tried to lure the Aryan into the Straits of Messina and ambush them with fireships and galleys? That's certainly what I'd have tried, and that's what Cammock was recommending. It's not a good place to go, the Straits of Messina. It's a very, very difficult place to go. It's so hot my chocolate is melting. Terrible. So, interesting enough, Bing is quite clever in how he deals this from the information warfare side of things. Because whilst the Spanish fleet had arrived, with both the Admiral Antonio de Gazata and the General Quartermaster of the Spanish Navy, Jose Patino Rosales, on board, it had also carried 36,000 infantry, 8,000 horse cavalry, plus artillery supplies, ammunition, under the command of Marquis Lead, who was probably the better military mind of the group. The Spanish fleet had managed to surprise the Austrians at Palermo, and a month later, most of Sicily had fallen, with the exception of Messina and a few coastal fortresses. Byng was technically escorting 2,000 German infantry under the command of a General Wetzel to the citadel of Messina to try and secure it. Byng also, he was quite careful. He proposed a cessation of arms on Sicily for 2 months to lead the military Marquis Lead, the Spanish commander, which was rejected. And so that therefore gave him officially no choice but to assist, as the Savoyards and the Austrians were British allies. The Irish, George Cammock sort of warns the Spanish command exactly what the British are going to do. He does seem to work that out. And he seems to have quite a good idea of how the British could be dealt with. And they consider keeping the fleet in Padres Roanstead, where it could be assisted by shore batteries. However, Gazzetta and Patino seem to think that Byng is not going to attack them. That Byng will be scared off by them, and that they can sail to Malta to join forces with another Spanish squadron, which will allow them to have strong enough strength that they can then come back and attack the British. Basically, their theory is that the British are so dumb and slow in their minds, mentally, that the British will let them sail out uncontested, won't do anything, and then they can come back and surprise the British. For some reason, Byng wasn't playing ball. So they sail out and form up on line. And this is as Byng is bearing down on them. Byng goes, well, you formed line of battle. Good for you. We will form line of battle and come after you. At which point the Spanish go, and then they keep coming. And this is the problem, because Byng's fleet keeps coming. It's not slowing down. It's not trying to engage from range. He's not going to engage in a long-range artillery duel. He is trying to drive it home as close as he can. In fact, his intention is to get through, see the point at which, actually, he said that he does make an interesting point quoted in one account. I'm not quite sure what it says, where he flashes he sends a signal that you are not allowed to fire till you can see their eyes. That's only included in one account, which is published 15 years after the actual battle. So I'm not quite sure about it, but he certainly does hold the fire of the British till they get very close. And they keep coming, and they keep coming. And so the Spanish, firstly, the rear of the line starts to fire without having orders. So technically, that's provided him with reasons to engage. Legitimacy of his engagement. They've rejected his cessation of fire suggestion that, and then when he's come to mediate with them in person, they started firing on him, and he basically descends on them. And first, the rear part of the squadron is swallowed up and is just, and then the center of the squadron is swallowed up as they just keep gaining on them, because the Spanish aren't coming back to try and assist. They are trying to get away. And it's interesting that the ships to the front, which were some of the galleys and some are the ones which get away, because they're the ones which already had a head start and were starting to run. Go on, Eagle. Did John Bing's execution really have such a positive effect on the RN? We'll talk about that in a bit. At the moment, we're dealing with his dad and his dad's famous battle. Shomak, this sounds like a Japanese plan. Frederick, he's going to... Well, you know, he is an admiral of the fleet. He is expected... And also, as he pointed out in his letters to them, I have brought no great warships with me. I have brought a fleet commensurate with my position and status as Admiral of the Fleet and First Sea Lord, former Senior Naval Lord of the United Kingdom. I have been sent out to mediate on these matters, but I have brought no great warships with me. You see what he said there? I have brought no great warships with me. I have brought only second and third rates. How can you be scared of me? How can I be intimidating when I bring only peace, love, harmony, and 22 ships at a line which are armed to the teeth, but none of them are the biggest ones? Jeff Beeler, was this a general chase situation? Very quickly it was. Very, very quickly it was. It turned very quickly from being a line of battle kind of scenario to a we will track you down and take you out scenario. Well, as we said earlier, the Spanish did technically fire first. The fact that they were scared stiff because the British were closing down, and because the British did actually wait till they got really, really close to fire. So the Spanish thought, the British are firing. This is our chance to hit them. And the Spanish firing seems to have gone wild. Let's put it this way. There's some of the stats, which I'm not quite sure I believe for the losses, are for the casualties on the British side, 500 killed or wounded. The Spanish side, 2,500 killed or wounded. 3,000, near enough 3,700 captured. 10 ships of the line captured, 4 ships of the line destroyed, 4 frigates captured, 1 store ship captured, 1 bomb ketch destroyed, 4 smaller warships captured, sunk or destroyed. It's not nice. Nicholas Haddock goes on to become... you didn't go through the sort of the formation that they have. Nicholas Haddock goes on to become an Admiral of the Royal Navy, in fact in charge of the Mediterranean between 1738 and 42. Doesn't always have success. And in fact, he was a member of Parliament who never attended Parliament or casted a vote. So, yep. Matthews rose to the rank of Admiral. Of course. Falkingham went on to become Governor of Newfoundland and Comptroller of the Royal Navy. Different from Comptroller. George Walton went on to become a full Admiral, including serving West Indies under Benbow. Had a long career. And Philip Vaughanborough also went on to become Commodore Governor of Newfoundland. So it's kind of interesting that two of them go on to become governors of Newfoundland. He has picked out a very successful, very good group of captains who he could rely on to do what he needed them to do. And that was his first choice, basically. Schumacher, Gonigal, it was referring to the Spanish plan. It'll be great. The enemy will do exactly what we want them to, and then we will destroy them. Sounds very IGN. Yes, it was. The British were supposed to be completely unassuming because basically they believed Bing's hype too much. In that Bing is going, please, cessation of hostilities. Please have a cessation of hostilities. And, you know, again, I have no great ships and this stuff. What they should have done is looked at the actual... It's going to sound strange. They should have looked, instead of looking at the ships and counting their guns, they should have looked at the ships and looked at their sails. They should have looked at the smartness of their positioning, the organization, the quality of the crews being put together and how they're handling themselves. If they had had observers seeing that and seeing how well handled and how well organized they were, they'd have realized that this was very much a wolf in sheep's clothing scenario, in that these ships were very well handled. They had very experienced captains and officers. They had pretty much hand-picked crews. Yes, he hadn't been able to pick his third in command, but he de facto gets around that by using 3 of his senior captains as commodores. And in nicest way, if the only political concession he has to make to get the fleets he wants is to take someone's Bezzy mate who's a rear admiral with him as his third in command, Bing won't care about that. Bing's a good politician as well as a good naval officer. He proves that later on in his career. So Thompson, that's what. If a sloop and a cruiser are a squadron, 22 second rates are an armada. This is how you fight in the Age of Sail. You insult me by running on my kindness of smaller ships. Yeah. 20 seconds. Well, let's be honest. Again, let's go back to them. Before we get into the more in battle, let's go back to that. It's they're only 3 second rates. The rest are all third rates. There are 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 third rates. 2, 4, 6, 7 fourth rates. 2 fifth rates and a 6th rate. It's quite a balanced force. It doesn't look, any person you can say, oh well, yes, it's mostly made up of 4th rates and 5th rates, Well, actually, when you look at it, it's got very, very good crews, very, very good captains who go on to all quite very senior things. This is a template for Nelson's Band of Brothers, if you think about it. It's what the British did at the Battle of Trafalgar. We can't send you a lot of ships, we can send you some very good captains. Donna Fritz, how do you chase down a fleet in the age of sail? Seems like if the wind isn't at your back, you won't be doing much chasing. Well, pretty much the British ships were faster than the Spanish ones. They were more recently commissioned, and they hadn't been in the Mediterranean waters as long, so their hulls hadn't fouled up as much, and they had more sails. They had more sails at the square foot of sailage, so they could actually get slightly faster. And the Spanish didn't start. Let's put it this way. The Spanish dithered for quite a while, so the British were well within range by the time they started running. In terms of, it wasn't going to take them all day to catch up to them. Frederick Baird, if I was the Spanish and the British kept getting closer but not firing back as I fired them, I would be terrified. Yeah. Donna Fritz, you close, it's both sides getting hit, but I assume a distance is above 20 to 30 miles. The winds might be different. Not good with weather patterns. They're slightly different. Golden were bronze guns still a thing at the time? There are a few bronze guns, but the vast majority of the guns in all these fleets are iron. You might have some long bronze toms at the front. Frederick Vega, why are you running? Jeff Beeler, HMS Charles Galley was built as a gallease, but had 2 rebuilds, so might not have been rowable. Yeah, no, she wasn't rowable at that point. Golden Eagle, what happened to HMS Africa in Trafalgar? She didn't seem to be in either squadron. She basically conducted the battle like she was a 3rd squadron on her own. Carl McGasma, galleys run away? They can try. They actually did get away because, frankly, the British were less bothered about taking the galleys than they were the ships of the line. Galleys weren't much use to the Royal Navy. Jeffrey, how come were total rebuilds at the time? Was it to take advantage of season wood? Yes, pretty much. And complete and utter rebuilds? Well, let's put it this way. If your ship is in for a refit for 7 years in Chatham Dock, I'm not sure how much of it survives. So Thompson, just what, going along at 5 to 10 knots can be boring, unless you, pretending to aim cannons at other boats, couldn't imagine trading a CNC 25 for 44 third. Avzowski, also, galleys can move towards the wind, slowly but still faster than a ship using sails. They can get away, and not all of them got away. Most did, not all. The Battle of Cape Passaro. So, the British have orders to dislodge the Spanish from Sicily, but really they couldn't have done this without the help of the Spanish. The Spanish are in a defensible bay with a strong army at their back and difficult to get into. It's a nightmare to try and attack, really. The British outnumbered them, though, but as I said, it's a nightmare to attack. Their land batteries, everything should have been on their side if they just stayed put. It's a scenario which you don't want to find yourself in. You really don't want to find yourself in. And that is the trouble for them. They don't want to be there, but they are there. And the Spanish weren't expecting the British to do it. The British were supposed to be anti-war. The British were supposed to be not wanting to get involved in these things. And they did. Jeff Beeler, HMS Argyle, 50-gun 4-freight was built as president, was a 38-gun 4-freight frigate for the Commonwealth, for example. A few Commonwealth ships at this battle. Yeah. There were a few. So, it is a great victory. And actually, I would say it's fairly decisive in terms of its fighting capabilities, in terms of its naval capabilities for the Royal Navy. It says Britain's as a naval power is confirmed by this one. This is the point at which Britain goes, yeah, the Mediterranean is now ours. The French fleet no longer exists after Toulon at this point. And the Spanish, well, they don't really exist after this either. Because some first rates do start to turn up in the Mediterranean fleet not long after this battle. Just so Britain can start to remind people, yeah, we had the big ones. They're here. We're smart and pretty. Hello, fluffy research assistant. He is saying hello. He was also saying hello to someone who came to the door. Holy Roman Emperor, Vienna, October 22nd, 1718, sends this message to Sir George Byng. What I love is that it takes... Think about this again. Byng wins the battle, and it is sort of interesting, as we pointed out, if I just check this again, because one good thing about this book is it does quite a nice way of pointing out different dates. So, 30 according to the pre-organized calendar, it's the 31st of July. According to the calendar we use now, it's the 11th of August. And the thing is, that's the 22nd of October that letter is written on. So that shows you how well the news gets around the world. By October, Byng is getting responses. It's great fun, Byng. But this shows you again how powerful Byng is when he's out in the Mediterranean. And why you spend someone quite so senior. But also why it's so important he's so interconnected with the halls of power. Because the communications going back and forwards are measured in months. So he is de facto on his own. He seems to enjoy it. Go on, Gaswood. I was asking, how long galleys can go against the wind? Maybe a few hours? Long enough. Don Fritz, did the Brits use a specific class of ship for the Med versus a ship that would be expected to sail the Atlantic? Nope. Royal Navy ships of the line would go where Royal Navy ships of the line were sent, and that could be anywhere in the world. There were summer ships of the line which did the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, China Station, all over the place. So, it was a fun battle. A pretty darn interesting one. And a pretty cool one as well. So, Don Fritz, was that for easy logistics or just so they could make more, and did the ships of the line differ greatly, or were they all fairly similar? They're all, to an extent, not that massively different, but they were individuals in that different shipyards would produce slightly different styles. Even the French, who supposedly worked to the same plans, still built very, very similar ships. Different sort of styles of ships. And they, they're built. They are all wooden. They're all sort of roughly to a similar pattern for each size, but it's different as well. And every ship has its own characteristics, which is half the skill of the captains, is learning their ship's characteristics. So after this battle, the only other naval pan Mediterranean was maybe the Ottomans, and to an extent the Venetians, but yeah, pretty much. So Thompson, looks like why I always love British ships to go anywhere, handle any sea vessels. Yep. Dennis Freeman, Jeffrey Indorf, the bell was melted down and recast though. I think the Ottomans were more of the vein of raiders and corsairs than ships of the line by this age. They did have a few things, ships of the line and these sort of things. Look, they don't really have much of a navy, but they have some of a navy. If you're thinking there's the Barbary pirates and there is the Ottoman navy. And the Ottoman navy is slightly different to the Barbary pirates, although technically the Barbary pirates are part of the Ottoman navy. In theory. So, summary. The Battle of Cape Passaro should be remembered more. It is actually a really, really cool battle, and honestly, most of the write-ups I find of it are pitifully small and underappreciating. It is one of the big turning points in world history. Because from this point on, the Royal Navy has it in its head, really. We talk about the Armada, we talk about the other things, and we always talk about the wars versus the French and all these things, but honestly, this is the battle where the Royal Navy goes, we can project power wherever you need it in the world, and we will deliver, Mr. Prime Minister. And it works. And that's important because this is how the Royal Navy keeps its funding. This is how, basically, the Battle of Cape Passaro is what establishes the Royal Navy's reason for being funded for the next, well, to this day. Where you need us, we go, is the Royal Navy's motto. Can-do attitude. We can clear the Sicily. It will take us time. It takes them 2 years, but they clear Sicily. They clear the fleet in seconds, and then they clear the rest of the Mediterranean. But they actually takes them 2 years to get the troops out of Sicily because of the various issues they have. With allies, mainly. Donna Fritz, did navies in the 1700s, 1800s perform training exercises similar to the modern Synkex, where they attacked an old ship to test tactics gun elect? Not really. They did do some firing practice, but not really. Brock Payne, the largest Ottoman fleets tend to be facing the Russians, particularly as the 18th century moves on. But it can out to the Med occasionally. See Navarino. Yep. Donna Fritz, sorry for the man questions. Age of Sail seems alien to me. That's fine. The questions are here what I'm here for. This is why I do live. I do the videos, the introduction videos for the people who prefer just a quick lecture. But for the people who prefer a seminar style, which is discussion, chat, this is why I do these lives. Because I enjoy them. I enjoy doing both. And this is a battle which doesn't get covered anywhere near enough. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. And I'll be back in a second. But there is one trouble with drinking all day to try and keep yourself cool. Back in a second. Alright, let's see. So, General, it seems to me that the Admiralty could have done with looking at the political power being displayed while selecting the commanders Far East in 1941. That is the point. As I said, my usual advice for my solution for the Far East problem in 1941 is to pick a supreme commander. And in many ways, that's what they did with George Byng and the Mediterranean in 1718. Because that's what he was de facto was. There is no one who outranks him in any way, shape, or form. John Shea, I actually like both the introductions and the lives, to be fair. I'm glad. Time to talk to Dr. Clark. There's an old saying that I'm not sure many have heard. Luxembourg or is that Lumberg? Are livable for long-lasting, lovely hulls. Just something about island people and boat construction. Yep. So, the Battle of Minorca, what can I say? You have two fleets, broadly the same size, turn up, and engage each other. And it's not fun. It's not fun for anyone. Mainly because for the French, they want to persist with the siege. They don't want to have to. Their ships have already been out there for a while. They are tired. They are worn. They don't want to do this. For John Byng, well, he's been complaining the entire way. Interesting enough, George and his wife have 15 children, 11 sons, 4 daughters. Of them, only 6 children managed to get to adulthood. From memory, it's 4 sons and 2 daughters. So this affects, this is sort of... Here's the thing. There aren't that many sons for George to have following on his career. Unfortunately, the only one who really does is John, who is a fairly good captain. He seems to be fairly good as a captain. Unfortunately, I'm not sure about his qualities as an admiral, or maybe as a commander-in-chief admiral, in that he seems to complain a lot and find fault in a lot and not able to fix a lot. It's almost like he's providing excuses for why he's going to be defeated before he even gets defeated. It could be because he's worried about the Acts of Parliament. It could be because he's worried about all sorts of things. But the Articles of War are there. He knows them. Everyone knows them. It's his problem. Shumack. Also, dig some fortification. It might just be me, but I think it would have been a much higher morale if I was inside a concrete fort rather than a tent dealing with mosquitoes. Think so. Brock Payne, was he the youngest child? No, I don't think he was the youngest. I think he was the fourth younger. So basically, there are 2 younger than him who survived to adulthood. So, and I don't think I think there are others. It's an interesting scenario, John Byng. No. I'm sorry, he does suffer in comparison to his father. Now, what happens is the Lieutenant Baker Phillips issue. Okay? Lieutenant Baker Phillips was on HMS Anglesey in 1745. And it's not nice what happens. And actually, interesting enough is I have put up because of my the lovely joy of maths, and I didn't realise when I did this morning because they are so similar. The 1759 Acts of Parliament, rather than the slightly earlier ones, which are even more explicit. Now, these acts of part of these ones are from 1759. They're the set after Byng is executed. And there was a reason I selected them, and I forgot to mention this in the introduction this morning with all the bang going on. Because prior to when he was put forward through, there is 10 is still left as death. But after all the other ones shall suffer death or such other punishment as from the nature and degree of the offence a court-martial should deem him to deserve. And that's the point. They add in that half sentence after Byng dies because they feel Byng was unreservedly Byng was made a scapegoat by one side in Parliament, the opposition largely, and the King, which when it wasn't really as massively his fault, although I consider him largely culpable, I don't consider him solely culpable enough that he should have been executed as he was for it. But he was found guilty, and he's still guilty even under these relaxed rules. Algahar 1. Only one place stops mosquitoes, really. Antarctica. Unfortunately, it's summer down there, so I'm not sure if that's even going to stop them. So probably at the moment it's in the north. Hang on, no, it's winter down in Antarctica, isn't it? It's summer up in Arctic. So yeah, right. Everyone want to go down to the Antarctic? Nice and cold. Hello, New Isambard Kingdom Brunel 4472, or should I say Isambard Kingdom Brunel Flying Scotsman. We're now looking at the context of Lieutenant Baker Phillips. So Baker Phillips is the second lieutenant. He is a relatively inexperienced one. And his ship loses its master. It loses its... The first lieutenant is never mentioned, so I presume he dies as well. And loses its captain all in one go. And they are taken completely by surprise because the captain, without checking, presumes the ship coming up to him in the channel must be a fellow British ship. It can't be a French one. When he realizes a French ship, he pulls the worst maneuver known to mankind and manages to flood his lower gun deck. So that can't fire. The ship's now listing. They get blasted and raked by the French. They'll get killed, and this poor second lieutenant is left in charge. And he surrenders the ship. Now, we can all talk about whether or not that was the most sensible thing to do. And certainly for his life expectancy, it wasn't, considering he gets executed. But the thing is, at that point, they then put in rules. And the rules are put in the Articles of War by Parliament, which basically stress that if you give in, if you run away, because they felt that if Baker Phillips had been a captain or an admiral, he wouldn't have been as harshly treated. They changed it so they would have been, and this is how they changed it. Now, number 10 is pretty much exactly as written in the earlier Act of Parliament, the one post Baker Phillips dying, but after Baker Phillips, but pre-Byng being executed. From that onwards, all the rest are as they were adapted after Bing has been executed. And they gain the sentence: shall suffer death or such other punishment as from the nature and degree of the offence a court-martial shall deem him to deserve. Angosona, if we go to the southernmost continent, we'll have to bring our own iron brew. Yes, but let's put it this way, we'll find plenty of ice for it. King's Rook, sounds like they went in the wrong direction by being harder on everyone else, but what do I know? Pretty much the policy was that they didn't want young officers being prosecuted for something that senior officers would get away with. Now, and then you've got number 12. Every person in the fleet who through cowardice, negligence, or disaffection shall in time of action withdraw or keep back, or not come into the fight or engagement, or shall not do his utmost to take or destroy every ship which it shall be his duty to engage, and to assist and relieve all and every of his Majesty's ships of those of his allies, which it shall be his duty to assist and relieve, every such person so offending, and being convicted therefore of the sentence of court-martial, shall suffer death. Simply put, Bing is convicted on 2 counts, number 10 and number 12. Because he doesn't assist the fortress in Minorca, and he doesn't engage the enemy strongly enough. That's what puts him to death. And notice those 2, he would have still been convicted in the 1759. So, people say there was a reaction to Bing's death and it was modified. Not really, considering those 2 would still have executed him. What's interesting is that the other 3, which he could also have been guilty of, but might not have come with executions, would now not necessarily come with an execution. And the whole point of this, was it to encourage Royal Navy officers to do what they were doing anyway? Well, if you consider the example of George Bing, no, it's what they were doing anyway. So what is it about? These articles of war have nothing to do with the Royal Navy. I have to say, I disagree entirely with Nicholas Rogers' idea in many respects. I can understand why Nicholas Rogers says this, but actually, I think he's missed the wrong emphasis. More and more in the course of the century, and for long afterwards, British officers encountered opponents who expected to be attacked, and more than half expected to be beaten. These articles of war are about making your enemy expect to be attacked. They're about putting very plainly, publicly, and there is a lot of press attached to them and a lot of publication of them going out around Europe and around to wider allies to explain that this is the Royal Navy's policy. We are mandated to be aggressive. They are already that. They are already doing this. This is just making sure it's obvious. It's painfully obvious to the enemy. So from now on, when you know you are going to have to fight the Royal Navy, whatever you do, you know you're going to have to fight them, it raises the bar. This is a form of deterrence. These acts of Parliament are a deterrent. They are the British equivalent of going, we have nuclear weapons. At this period, they are the British going, our Navy will have to attack you. We know they'll attack you anyway because that's how they're trained, that's how they're selected, that's how they're chosen. But we are now making it very, very publicly clear that their incentivization is to attack you, even at the risk of themselves, because whilst they might die fighting you, they will die if they don't fight you. Everyone, sounds like it could have been avoided if there had been clemency granted to Baker Phillips. Tempting, yes, but unfortunately the admirals at the time decided not to. They wanted to make an example to officers who found themselves in command of ships. They didn't want officers to think that their response was to surrender, because they were worried about the aggressiveness in the Royal Navy. Abazaski, I read in one of my books that J. Bing was one of the judges to court-martial Thomas Matthews, and after the Battle of Toulon. I received the name of battle. I recall the name of battle. For not forming the battle line. Yep, he was. And critique of him. Abazaski, and so on Minorca, he was more focused on forming the correct battle line instead of fighting the battle. Presume that's not the full truth? That really isn't. He does form a line of battle, which means he doesn't engage properly. In the nicest way, he's critical of Matthews for breaking out of the line of battle too early to attack the enemy, and he feels that this was a disastrous decision from Matthews. But if you consider Matthews is copying what John Bing's own father, George, had done at the Battle of Cape Passaro, that's what's going through Martin's mind, Matthews' mind. And this is the thing. John is far too much of a everything has got to be perfect and everything has got to be as written in the books officer. Golden Eagle, can we wargame the scenario and see what would have happened? I actually have wargamed the scenario on Total War. On the Empire's Total War, and to be fair, it wasn't an impossible win. In fact, I won quite well, but I played both sides. I tried as both sides, and both sides I could win as. It's a battle which could have gone either way. Theoretically, he should have been able to do it. Propane, did this sort of thing also come up after the loss of Admiral ambuscade to Bayonnaise in 1798? I remember the British captain was court-martialed. Yep, it did. As long as a captain could show that he was being aggressive and acting within the Articles of War, if he lost his ship, this is also the other thing. And that's the thing which the people forget with these Articles of War. They also provide coverage to captains who behave aggressively in circumstances where they do lose their ships. They can go, it's what the Articles of War expect of me. So I was behaving as enshrined within the Articles of War. They're doing the right thing. New IKB 472, are these rules still in play? There are new ones since, as Daniel Freeman points out, but some of the wording isn't all that new. Did the new ones still allow for executing admirals? Tempting. No maximum penalty term is to be allowed access to the third class model. Yes. Actually, I think, serious enough, the maximum penalty, there are some quite severe penalties included in there for senior officers who don't do their duties properly. Nick, is this the same syndrome as fighting kamikazes? The other guy has nothing to lose, so it's very dispiriting. Yeah. Shomak, throw your soldiers into positions whence there is no escape, and they will prefer death to fight, as Sun Tzu. Yep. But, you see, the thing is, I don't, as I said, these acts of, I see these acts of parliament, the acts of war, and the naval acts, they're basically enshrining what is already the case is there, and reinforcing and supporting it, and making it far more public. Because the Royal Navy has worked out quite early on that the success it is going to have is going to depend on it being aggressive. Aga, if Ming had acted aggressively and lost, he may still be in court-martialed, but under different articles. Yes, and the penalty would be far less. The penalty for losing your fleet is dismissal. The penalty for failing to fight is death. For fleeing the enemy, for the fleeing enemy, you should make golden bridges. There were a lot of politics meddling in the running of the RN in the 18th century, weren't there? Also a bit in the 19th century. There is always a bit. It's a primary instrument of the state on the global stage. There is always going to be a lot of politics involved in it, and there is politics involved in it to this day. Eric Hogan, what is your impression of the naval command total war empire? It works quite well. I'd like it using it for scenario testing because I can run the same scenario again and again and again and again. I can position ships and I can run it and I can save it as videos and I can watch it through and use it for students. So I liked it. Inca, the glorious 1st of June, despite victory, had to reteach many lessons on lack of discipline and training to the RN. A lot had already been forgotten from John Byng times as usual. Yeah. Danny Freeman, Voltaire had something better to say about shooting admirals than Sun Tzu. Yeah. Basically, the idea was that occasionally the Royal Navy shot one or two admirals in order to encourage the rest. Basically, a form of internal sort of continual, occasional, purge, let's say this, of the dead wood. But eventually they find the far more efficient purge is to just cut people off when they put them in dead-end positions. Seb Thompson, Dr. Clark, color me cautious, but I'd have ran the fleet in and done as much damage as I could, rather go out with honor than in disgrace. Yep. Come on. Go on, Eagle. In China's Sui dynasty, the General General Yang Su once told his men, "We need 300 men to defend the encampment. You decide who." When the 300 men were finalized, he executed them. He won the fight. It's nothing new. Go on, Eagle. Yeah, I'm not really sure about that as a policy of executing 300 of my own soldiers, especially the ones who volunteer. Because let's be honest, that's probably the ones who are going to volunteer, the good ones. Take care, Daniel. Nicasia, a lot is to do with Britain being an island nation. We cannot afford to lose control of the sea, so the risk of doing so due to timidity needs to be removed. Yes, to an extent. Right, I'm going to be finishing this at probably 8:30 as we've got through this quite so quickly, and because I haven't had lunch or tea today, so I would like to go order some food. Because it's been so hot, so I didn't have lunch. I had the good breakfast though, so don't get too worried about me. It's so hot in the middle of the day. I've been living off basically a liquid water and iron brew diet. Angus Dunham, Dr. Clark, are these articles why Captain Leach of the HMS Prince of Wales was in peril of court-martial? Not these particular ones, but the version of them which was in power at the time would have done it for it. Gone Eagle. No, they volunteered to stay in camp whilst the rest of the men attack. Still not sure I'd have killed them. Maybe the reason for the culling was the same as Stalin's purge in 1938. Get rid of competitors' adherence. Always tempting. Then it comes. When can we expect to see you spring sharp entries for Drax competitions? I don't tend to put entries into Drax competitions, mainly because I chat away with him so often with friends. So it would seem a bit, how do I put it, biased for me to put any entries into any of his competitions. He does have some cool ones, though. Sometimes talk about Powerade or equivalent. It's the electrolytes, and it helps keep me on in it and helps keep on war days from a labourer. That's good, I know, but my precious. Right, so what have we got coming up? The Battle of Cape Passaro is today, and on Thursday it's HMS Emerald and HMS Enterprise, the E-class cruisers of the first steps of the modern force. My aim is to do an introduction for both of those ships because I think they both have different enough careers; they deserve their own introductions. Mitchell Oates, water and I brew, and you say nothing to eat. I also have had milk, and not even chocolate milk. It was normal milk. You know, I was being very good today, Mitchell. Very, very good. Very healthy for me. Patron video 4. What if the Sing Tower incident goes hot? That me and Daniel are recording the next part of tomorrow. We've already got 4 parts recorded. Thursday 20th, Battle Tech Seal. The problems are depending upon allies. Allies. Tuesday 25th, could Crete have been saved in 1941? I'll give you a heads up. Yes, it could have. Thursday 27th, the Convoy War in a Perfect Storm PQ-17. It's going to be cool. And Monday the 31st, Patron 5, courtesy of Bea Lenora, Mediterranean gunboat diplomacy in the Victorian era. Constantinople and Alexandria. And if you've bothered to gone and read the video, you'll have found that when I post it, that a third one has been added into there. There's been a third one added as last gasp of this sort of type of gunboat diplomacy. So I, added in the Tangiers incident. Sure, Matt. You can. That's like you can submit them anonymously. Honestly, I think having worked with Drac enough, I think he would know my stuff. Then HMS Mikael Clapp, HMS Henderson, and HMS Nelson from the LHD names. Ooh, that'd be good. Actually, I'd be tempted by Vian was an amphibious warfare commander. I would definitely be tempted by HMS Michael Clapp and HMS Philip Vian. And I would actually think HMS Bertram Ramsey as well. Sam Thompson, wasn't discarding brew just offering something that would complement the brew? Thank you. I'll think about it. Gone Eagle, could PQ-14, PQ-17 have been saved? Yes. But the trouble is, the RN thought they saw what was their worst case scenario unfolding in front of them. And this is the trouble. You think you see worst case scenario, you enact your plan for your worst case scenario, which is what they did. The trouble is, that plan doesn't have any justification in any scenario other than the worst case scenario. Vision, I'm sad I'm missing Singtel Live. You are going to be, it's going to be long and loud. Carmen Gasmo, once on a biker meeting, I only had liquid sustenance with about 2 hours of cardio, mostly in the evenings. Took on 3 kilos in 5 days. Yeah, I have noticed that the liquid surviving in the heat is definitely affecting the waistline, but hopefully at some point the bike arrives. Gone Eagle, could Mao have taken Taiwan? No, the Royal Navy was sitting in the way. Derp Squad, read the video. The video has been put up. Not the video of it, but the video announcement has been made up and it's been scheduled. So you can find the scheduled video which has a full description of the video and the topic. Gone Eagle, Mao did take Hainan. Yes, he did. But the Royal Navy was in the Straits of Formosa by the time he could have got to Taiwan, and they were going, hello. Have you met HMS Defender? She's a daring class destroyer. You ain't got anything which can fight her, and there are cruisers coming behind her, and there's an American task force coming behind that. They're coming with their carrier, which was a little bit slower. But don't worry, we're here to say hello. In the nicest way, the Chinese Navy at the time had nothing that could fight that level of firepower. They just didn't. It would have been suicide. I was asking, Battle of Texel is where you send the Dutch squadron to fight the French, but the main force doesn't follow, and the Dutch save themselves by dropping anchors and the French get drifted? Not really. So Thompson, Dr. Clark, I suppose there's no pools or beaches open for you to get in some good like cardio and core work? Not at the moment. Unfortunately, no. And especially not for me, because I live with two shielded people, so I have to be quite careful about where I go. And I did have this conversation with my gym, which I'm a member of. It's just the council gym. And they're basically going, we're just doing the same thing for everyone. I was like, do you have any evenings which are even lower attendance so that I can... No. I said, hopefully my bike arrives soon, and my standing bike arrives soon from Amazon. Derp Squad. Let's see. Can I read? Oh, Derp Squad. Oh, I thought it was a dyslexic word substitution like I do. I do that as well sometimes. I find myself doing that sometimes, but on this occasion, no. It happens. It's the joy of dyslexia. South Thompson, the water retention is due to the... Do not talk about the sugar in my drinks. Golden Eagle, probably best to have shifted combat power to Korea then. Yeah, there was quite a hefty amount of Royal Navy war fighting power sitting off the Straits of Formosa, going, "Hello, you want to come and have a play?" Mitchell notes, if I were China, I'd be very afraid of Iran's Collin-class diesel submarines. Yeah, they're pretty good. Abadaski, then must have mistaken the place. Sorry. No, there have been a fair number of battles of Texel. The one I'm talking about is actually... It's going to sound strange. Okay. The Battle of Texel of 21st of August, 1673. Hence, I'm looking at it on the 20th of August, because that's my normal day. And in this battle, it's a strategic Dutch victory because basically England and France are supposed to be working together to fight the Dutch. And the French don't engage. And the Dutch don't manage to overwhelm the British, but the French don't engage. And so that's it, basically. So I think you're thinking of a later battle where the British and the Dutch were on the same side. But this is the early battle where the British and the French were on the side against the Dutch. Golden Eagle, I'm fairly sure they're presidents. They're elected. They're elected presidents. That's what the Taiwanese people call them. You might not agree with that title, but that is their title as given to them by their people. Until that scenario changes, that is it. Steph Thompson, I've gone from 240. Ooh, it does help. I tend to do a lot of exercise. I tend to be in the gym or swimming pool every day of the week, and not being able to go to the gym or swimming every day of the week, and spending a lot more time sitting down as a consequence is not being great. Stephanie Wilson, I don't think you mean what Golden Eagle is on about. At least I hope not. Golden Eagle, that's good. I will call them what I will. They're presidents. Governors are appointed. In the nicest way, unless you're talking under the American system, a governor is appointed. A president is elected in terms of democratic, usually. And I just would like to point this out for anyone who ever does make this assumption. I don't think anyone suggesting that Britain rejoining the European Union is like Taiwan should rejoin China is a good idea. Nicest way that might comparing European Union to China might not be good for the European Union's case. Just considering what's going on. Right, so where else to find me? Twitter, AC_Naval History. Patreon, always nice to say hello to you. And it's where you can find all the things. And Global Maritime History. Golden Eagle. You don't recognize sovereignty. That is fine. You don't have to recognize their sovereignty. What has to recognize definition of sovereignty is, are they a nation which is able to decide, arm its own forces, police its own territory, and all these things? They do that, so that technically they have sovereignty. Stephen Wilson, my comment was written before the second of Golden Eagle's comments. Yes. I know. And the thing is, actually, we were discussing Taiwan a lot today on Bilge Pumps when it's going to be comes out next week. And it's a complicated situation. It is. But at the base point, I don't think Hong Kong presents a good model for Taiwanese. In fact, if things had taken a bit longer with Hong Kong, that might have been a better model. But let's get off politics and get on to naval history, which is far more fun. Because let's be honest, politics involves real live humans who are more often than not disappointing and annoying. Pigeon, I don't recognize the sanity of the governor of Florida. No, let's go. No, there are so many people like that. It's, yeah. Oh my God. It's constant economic war between the Commonwealth systems and Napoleonic systems. Oops. Yeah. Welcome to the world of the modern world. Right then. So, as we got about 10 minutes, any questions? Any stuff before we finish? Did you enjoy this? Because I realize going back into the past a bit like this is a bit out of break from what I've been doing mostly, but I want to try and present a slightly longer form channel. And I have to admit, while I was doing my book and getting that all done, I didn't really want to disappear too much far from the area I was writing about, because I needed that all up in my head the whole time to get the book out. So now the book's over, I'm starting to add in these, and I'm looking forward to seeing what ideas have been turning up in the patron suggestions and all these things for what they are. And I'm wondering if you like looking at some of the older ones as well and some of the more distant battles, because there are some going to be coming up, and I have some ideas for more as it goes through time. New KB 472, even though I missed it most of today, I did enjoy. Wincox, fun stuff, feel free. Brockman, no, I actually like the lectures on Forgotten and Uncommonly Studied Naval Battles. What's interesting about Battle of Cape Passaro is, if we go through it quickly, Byng comes back as the First Lord of the Admiralty. He's made a minister. So he does 2 terms as the senior naval lord. He goes out, fights this big battle, comes back, and he's made the minister in charge of the navy. So he has a huge power in terms of shaping the Royal Navy, which is what will fight the Napoleonic Wars. So Byng, because of his son, the legacy of his son, George Byng is a bit forgotten. And frankly, George Byng is one of the most interesting admirals the Royal Navy ever has, because he lays the foundation for so much of what comes later. And it's always one of the things I usually get with the students. I go, Brian, today we're studying Admiral Byng. And they all go, why are we studying John Byng? You know, he lost the battle, he gets himself killed and all this stuff. I go, no, we're looking at George, his dad. And they'll go, what? And his dad was really successful. Time period, like it. Maybe a bit more about tactics detail I miss. I will add that in as it goes on. Basically, today I was concentrating on trying to introduce George Byng. There are times when I can deal with battles where, honestly, the commanders are going to be more well known, so I can talk more about the tactics. Very good. I enjoyed this video, this one, Little Ships particularly, and the Hollow Jest. Cool. Eric Gankan, this was interesting. There's a lot of interesting in this earlier. There is. And I think I've got coming up. I think I have coming up something about. I know I'm currently researching one on Trimarines, Quadrumarines, Quinquemarines, and Senka-Marines. So going right back to the age of the original rowing war vessels of Rome Total War, basically. Thank you, Stephanie. King's Rook, very enjoyable, though I am asleep on my feet for the most part. I'm sorry to hear that, King's Rook. Get some rest. Then it comes, why did it take so long for the revolution in hull frames that occurred just before the Age of Steam? Literally, it's getting the skills to do them, and it's getting the equipment to do it, and getting it standardized. Vision, yes, I enjoyed it. I don't know how much of these battles in the 18th century. Be interested in Commonwealth Navy and Commonwealth time. What did they use instead of HMS? Ooh. Well, I'll get into that. I'll do one on the Commonwealth Navy at some point. Ian Carr, very interesting time period and much later about. Seth Thompson. I haven't heard much of the about the Bings, and this was a very good live chat. Don't know much about this period, so appreciate the education. Thank you. That's a pleasure. Mitchell Oates, the more history you know, the better understanding you have. Well, this is the point. Sometimes I throw in this history stuff because of the different history periods, because I like to show people how it continues on, how similar things come through. Garm Gaspard, and there is the most important. We will get to the Adriatic, don't worry. Right. I'm going to say thank you very much to everyone, and I'm going to go get some food. Thank you very much for everyone for being here this evening. Thank you to everyone for chatting. I hope we've had a nice evening. I know I'm cutting this a bit short, but that's because I'm hot and hungry. So thank you, Bijan. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Federico. Thank you, Porter Brock. Thank you, Golden Eagle. Thank you, William Cox. Thank you, New IKB 472. Thank you, Brock. Thank you, Daniel, who's disappeared. Thank you, Stafford. Thank you, Bijan. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, King's Rook. Thank you, Daniel Phillips. Thank you, Ian Carr. Mitchell Oates. Thank you. Calvin Gasman. Thank you. And thank you, Stafford. And thank you, Albert. Thank God, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. And if you would like to see more like these, and maybe there are battles which I haven't covered so far and you haven't heard me talking about so far, please leave a comment below with suggestions of what battles you might like to be covered, or you might sort of find if you go digging around. Because go and look them up. The interesting thing, the War of the Quadruple Alliance. I'm sure most people haven't ever heard of that before. I've heard about it and studied it quite a bit. There are several battles in that which are quite interesting, including one of the first ones of Cape St. Vincent, which is a pretty cool battle. So go and have a look at them, see if you like them, and if you would like me to do a talk about them, I'm happy to do. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Take care. Thank you, John Share. Thank you, Jay Ilworth. And night-night, everyone. Thank you. Bye, Derp Squad.